Good evening. Welcome in. Tonight we are going to be doing the commentary for Donkey Kong Country 2. I've actually been looking forward to this video for quite some time. It is my favorite game out of all the Donkey Kong Country games, and I will be going over what I like about it, what I don't like about it. I'm going to go over how it's accessible, things like that. So, growing up as a kid, I kind of had a tendency to stick with real specific lines of games. Like, if I found a game that I liked, if there was a sequel, 9 times out of 10, I would either request it for the holidays or I'd go out and get it myself. So, Donkey Kong Country, I mean, it was already a pretty solid game. When they announced a sequel, I was actually really excited. So they went ahead and improved everything on this game. I like the art direction. I mean, it's still the same art direction, but I like the new enemies. I like the new setting and stuff. The beginning area takes place on a pirate ship, and the rest of the game either has like a slightly spooky theme or an industrial theme or a somewhat of a pirate theme. It's just fun from top to bottom. So I'm pretty sure I'm in the majority when I say that Donkey Kong Country 2 is the best out of all of them. I mean, we had 3, but 3 was, like, it had its issues and stuff, which we'll be going over when I go to do the commentary for 3. Once 3 is released, I'm going to be releasing that in the next couple of weeks. But no, I really like these beginning areas for Donkey Kong Country 2. I like how it takes place on a pirate ship. It's a nice, fresh amount of flavoring and stuff. And, I really love how they reworked everything. So the bonus room here is really, really fun as well. You get Rambi and, it's just destroy the enemies and stuff. I fail it right there, but it's just, I really like how they went ahead and reworked it. There's actually things that are goals at the end now, so that thing in question being one of the coins that you can get and stuff. And for the bonus rooms, you can save up the coins and use them to unlock levels later. So I still have accessibility issues with Donkey Kong Country 2 and stuff. A lot of it still smears together, but I don't really view that as a problem with the game. I view it more as a problem with me myself. So everything still looks like either a brown blur or a blue blur, but the game is still really fun to play, like even when I'm kind of struggling against it a little bit. I like how the levels end here. You have a chance to get a prize if you hit the target correctly and stuff, and it's just really nice. So for this level, I like how they kind of kept the pirate ship theme, how, where you move on the map now is pretty much guaranteed what you're going to be dealing with. So now they have, like, it taking up in the masts and stuff, and it's just, like, really, really fun. The bonus rooms are actually really, really fun in this game as well. Like, I actually enjoy them more in this game than I did in the first Donkey Kong Country. I like racing to the end to get the coin and stuff, and I like the idea that I can go and spend these coins later on more levels. So, the big thing that they did with this is there's like a lot more rope play. I feel like with Donkey Kong Country 1, they went ahead and like they had ropes and stuff, but it wasn't like this. Like I like how they kept with the overall pirate theming and stuff, how, a lot of these ropes could easily be used as ladders and stuff, and it was just really, really nice. Being able to go and kill multiple enemies with that barrel was really, really nice as well, I think. And then in this game, lives are way more plentiful across different varieties. So with the first game, you would primarily see red balloons all the time. In this one, you have way more blue and green balloons. So I think green is 2 lives and blue is 3. But it's nice to see that they expanded on it a bit. So I like the variety with these bonus rooms that they have. Even with the Destroy 'em Alls, it's not always an animal that you're going to be piloting and stuff. Sometimes it's just grabbing a cannonball and jumping up and destroying the enemies. It's just a heap of fun. I'm really glad that they put on their thinking caps for it. So I think Donkey Kong Country 2 excels in like a lot of things. It's almost a direct improvement off of every single facet that the first game established. I like the variety of enemies in this one. I like how like whatever area they're in, they have a tendency to be themed towards that area. So if you look at the Crocs, you know, it's like, oh, we're on a pirate ship. They all have peg legs and stuff, and they're really, really fun, you know. And I like how there's like hooks that you can bounce off of and everything else. You know, the rats are nice, and you know, again, they do a pretty good job keeping with the theme of things. The game, I feel, flows a lot more smoothly. You know, like we don't really have the sluggishness of DK. The agility of the characters has actually been greatly improved. Like, no matter what character you're playing as, you know, you feel good. Like, if you're playing as Diddy, you're a little bit faster, but not by much. Dixie, she's a little bit more slow, but she has the ability to helicopter around to slow her fall substantially, so you can, like, kind of glide over to new areas and stuff and find bonus rooms. I think that they pretty much had nothing but new enemies for the majority of this game, aside from like maybe the zingers and stuff. But I just kind of love what they did with it. I like the backgrounds and stuff. You know, this game actually functions really well to boot. Like, there's not really a lot of slowdown, I find. It just feels like really, really good to play. So the game flows really, really well. You know, even when speedrunning, it feels really, really kind of like buttery smooth. You know, you can just bounce from enemy to hook to enemy while you run along the surface and stuff, and it's really, really nice. I feel that the swimming levels are a direct improvement from the first game. Like, with the first game, the swimming levels, you're very sluggish. You can't really get the hell out of the way, you know, with much of anything. But with this one, everything feels a lot more snappy, I want to say. You know, like, I don't feel like I'm piloting around a lead of, or a brick of lead, essentially. You know, like, trying to have DK be that heavy and then go through these swimming levels was like a real huge nightmare. I like how they designed the aquatic enemies and stuff, how he kind of chatters his jaw and goes after you, and then you have like these little you have like these little boxes all over the place and stuff that keeps with the theme of the entire game being having this pirate theme to it, essentially. So I like how there's, you know, the hull of the ship in the background with all the windows and stuff, but you yourself are swimming through what is essentially a maze of boxes and various barrels, and it's really, really nice. I like it. I like how the enemies react as well, how they try to chase you down, or there's like starfish just kind of spinning along the hallway there, and I really enjoy it. You know, they really put on their thinking caps for a lot of this level, and it shows. So I really enjoyed Swanky's Bonus Bonanza. It gives you a chance to get extra lives and stuff that you can try it out with the exchange of banana coins and stuff, and it's super duper fun. I don't always get every answer right, but it's fun just going through and doing it, and it's a nice distraction from the main game and stuff, and I think it's really, really lovely that they went ahead and did this. So I find the rain effect in this game not as bad as Donkey Kong Country. In Donkey Kong Country, the rain is almost chunky to a certain extent. Like, it looks super chunky, where in Donkey Kong Country 2, it's more fine. It looks more like rain, which is really, really nice. It doesn't wash out my vision as badly. I like how we actually have new animals in this game as well. You know, the snake is really, really nice and super fun to bounce around on. You know, as you can see, I'm not really terribly good with them, but it's just really, really fun to bounce around and stuff, and I really enjoy it. You know, like, they're like, okay, well, you know, what new animals can we add? And the snake was one of them, and it was just a real huge heap of fun and stuff. I just think overall that the animals are just really, really silly and a joy to play as, and You know, I think it's great how he can just like bounce around and the platforming and roping segments for this game feel a lot more smooth. Like, going up the ropes doesn't really feel like a chore and stuff. It's actually surprisingly nimble for what it is, and I actually really appreciate that because I felt a lot of the platforming in DKC was very, very rough. Sometimes it was very rough and very chunky and not very responsive sometimes. I didn't really care for that too much. So we have another bonus room here that has pretty good variety, more of the dodge the enemy, collect the coin sort of stuff, and DKC 2 actually has a lot of variety to it, which is really shocking, you know, and it's just really fun to go through the levels and stuff because as the game progresses, you keep enough of the same old stuff to go and, you know, be comfortable with it, but there's enough new stuff to really keep you entertained and wondering what's coming down the track, which is really, really nice. So the animal-themed bosses actually make a comeback in DKC 2. This time we actually have one of what looks like one of the mini vultures from the first game, except it's a hell of a lot bigger, and now it's wearing a hat and throwing eggs at you and stuff. I actually really like the gimmicks for these bosses. A lot of the time they just feel like really, really appropriate and stuff, and it feels like the boss actually belongs there, which is really, really nice. You know, I mean, yeah, the vulture enemy is kind of rehashed from the first game, but they change it enough to keep it fresh, so now he's got, like, this pirate flavoring, and, you know, he's at the top of the ship, and it's just really, really, really lovely, I think. So DKC continues the trend of having all new areas. We never had anything like this in Donkey Kong Country. You know, it's we never had like a hardcore lava level and stuff, and there's just like all kinds of fun stuff in these. So you'll occasionally at the beginning of the game find these little chests that you can actually bust open. They normally have lives inside of them. And then the other thing that's really nice is we have the miniature croc enemy, except it's a little bit bigger. It's way more cartoony, and it's just really silly. Like, it felt like they were trying to be sillier with this game. They weren't really trying to take it seriously or anything. You know, they just kind of went through and they're like, okay, you know, how can we make people smile? How can we make them laugh? And so for a lot of these enemies, they just look really silly, really goofy and stuff, and you know, it's just stuff that you can look at and smile, I think. So out of all the bonus rooms, I actually like Collect the Stars the most. There's just something satisfying about collecting all of them and stuff, and I really like how they went about doing it. I also like how, compared to DKC, if you fail a bonus room, you can actually go back and get it, most of the time. So the spider is an all-new animal that you can actually go and get in DKC2, and he's really fun because he's not just a combat animal, he is also a utility animal, so you can go and you can spit out these little globs of web, essentially, and, you know, you can turn them into little mini platforms. The only real discrepancy I have with this is you can spit out ball after ball of web to make platforms, but the previous platform a lot of the time will disappear. The issue that I had with this is not so much the fact that they're disappearing, but sometimes they would disappear out of order, so you'll be going through a platform intensive area, and sometimes what would happen is instead of the third platform disappearing, the platform that is directly in back of you will disappear, and you can just literally go and die from it, essentially. I didn't really care for it too much. You know, it always makes me kind of nervous when I make like these little web platforms and stuff, because I'll sit there and I'll never know if it's going to be the third web platform that actually goes away or if it'll be the second one that fails. And so with the spider, I think you don't really ever know. You know, like sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't work great. You know, a lot of it I feel is trial and error. However, playing as a spider is fun. I think it's cute as hell that they have little sneakers on him and stuff. It just kind of keeps with the theme of everything's got to be like really silly and stuff. And I really enjoy him. He's probably one of my favorite animals to actually go and pilot throughout all of DKC2. So we're back in the trivia hall, you know, to answer more questionnaires and stuff. And the thing that I like about the trivia hall is it's pretty much almost always fresh, you know, and it's really, really nice because it kind of forces you to pay attention to what you're doing in the game because the devil is literally in the details and stuff. So it's like you can easily go and sit there and fail something simply because you weren't paying attention to it. And so I like how you can't just kind of brainlessly go through this entire section here and actually succeed. I mean, some questions you can, others you can't. So I primarily like this level for the theming as well as the overall direction that they went with it. I think the thing that makes this level shine the most is actually the music. The music for Donkey Kong Country 2 was a hell of a lot better than 1, in my opinion. Like, I mean, 1 is still good, don't get me wrong, but 2 just feels better. It feels like they just did better, you know, they wanted to do more with it. It just sounds really, really nice. The theme for Canon's Claim is arguably one of my favorites, you know. It just sounds good. It feels good to hear it, you know, and so they did some new stuff with the barrels in this level. Now it's like you directly steer into the barrels, which is really nice because you don't have to pay attention to the white rim across the top of it, which is really, really lovely. Now you just get in, lean left, lean right, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And then these barrels have a tendency to be automatic, which is also lovely. There are still barrels in the game where you can go and manually move them, or there are those that move on their own and you have to, you know, time it correctly, but they're much less frequent, so I feel it's a little bit more accessible and stuff in terms of playability, especially if you can't really see that well. And of course, the little mini vulture makes a comeback. This time wearing a little bit of a do-rag. Well, a little bandana, whatever you want to call it. I thought Lava Lagoon was actually one of the better swimming levels. I like the gimmick behind it, how you have this seal here and you have to literally have him spit into the water to cool it off and stuff. I really, really like how they did that because it gives the level a little bit of a sense of urgency. You kind of have to hustle through it a little bit and you kind of have to be decent at platforming and swimming to make sure you get to the end without like losing any of the Kongs or anything. And bouncing off of his back just seems kind of like a silly thing, you know, and I like how they did it, you know. I like how they said, okay, you know, we can't do the same old stuff, you know, what can we do that's new and original? So we'll see like a reprise of this later with a slightly different mechanic, but this one's actually just really, really fun, you know, go, hop, swim, you know, it's like it's got a little bit of a gameplay loop going there where You rinse, dry, repeat a lot of the things, and it works. Strangely enough, it works. It feels good. It doesn't really feel like tedious or anything, and I don't really feel like I'm struggling with it. And with the extra agility that the Kongs have in this game, it doesn't really feel like I'm struggling against it super hard or anything. It feels like, whenever I get hit by something, it feels like a mistake that I made instead of the character being so sluggish that you can't respond adequately. So, these puffer enemies are actually super fun as well. They explode later and give little needles all over the place. They send them flying all over the place when they blow up and stuff. So this level is actually really, really cool. Initially, I was really bad at it. Like, growing up as a kid, this was the level that I would get frustrated on a lot of the time because I didn't have patience to actually ride the hot air balloon. But the more I practiced it, the better I got at it, and eventually I started developing patience for it as well. It was just really, really fun, and the gimmick again for this level actually works a fair bit. You get on the hot air balloon, and then you got to inflate it at some point, with hot air, and then just keep pushing forward. Some you don't even have to inflate at all. You're literally just riding them down to the bottom. And then getting a hot air balloon and having Rambi on it was also a lot of fun as well, because you can just plow forward and just nail all these wasps and stuff, and it's just really, really fun, I think. It creates a really, really enjoyable experience. Again, it doesn't feel too tedious like Donkey Kong Country, or it doesn't feel out of place. It feels like it just belongs there, which is really, really nice. So yeah, I used to never have really any patience for any of this area. I would just try to push through it as fast as I could, and it would get me killed a lot of the times, mostly in this segment right here, because I wouldn't really have any of the tolerance to navigate the balloon correctly. So I know right here I wouldn't wait for the balloon to get to the bottom. I would literally just try to push through it as fast as I can, and it would normally cost me a Kong, or sometimes it would just kill me outright, or it's just a real huge pain, So I was pretty impatient growing up, and it really, I think it really kind of shows a little bit still, because I still try to rush through it a fair bit, and this is one of those levels that you have to take your time on, I like what they did. One thing that kind of pokes out with the backgrounds for DKC2 is they feel a lot more alive. I know with DKC they kind of look more static, but with DKC2 they look a lot more alive. Some of them have effects in the background and stuff, and I think it really just comes together. You can tell that they were really passionate with this game, because there's a lot of little details everywhere, which is really nice. So here's another area right here that would frequently kill me. Again, I wouldn't have any of the patience for it. I would just try to push through it as fast as I can, and I would die doing it, essentially. But no, I used to really hate this level quite a bit, but it actually, as I grew older, it actually became one of my favorites. It just kind of grew on me. So for this level, they decided to actually do something completely new with Squawks. In this game, he has more of an active role, I think. He's not so much a side character like I know with DKC. The main thing that Squawks would do is carry a light, and it didn't really feel too active. It felt very static, I think. He just kind of followed you around in the background and stuff, and that was pretty much it. In DKC2, he has more of a tendency of being an active character and stuff. He'll carry the Kongs, or Sometimes he'll carry the Kongs and then he'll have the ability to hork up nuts to attack enemies and stuff with, and it was just really, really nice. Like, I really love what they did with the character and stuff. I always felt he was so static in DKC, but now it's like you can see here, it's like, oh, he's carrying the Kongs, and it tells you to press Y, and like you can learn that, he can hork up nuts. Me personally, I don't use them too often. I just have a tendency to try to peel through it as fast as I can, and I love what they did with the character and stuff. I like how the character feels heavy with the Kongs attached as well. Like they give Squawks a fair bit of weight to him, so you literally feel the weight of the main characters on him as he struggles to kind of flap through the level and stuff. I feel it's really, really hard to have that kind of feeling in any SNES game. Like, they don't really feel like they ever do it quite right, but I think Rare kind of nailed it. They did a really good job kind of conveying the feeling of weight. So this is the first boss that is technically an inanimate object. I mean, I know he's supposed to be more of like a haunted sword and stuff, but normally in the DKC games we have a tendency to see like animals as bosses and stuff, so I thought this boss was pretty cool because he was like this giant cutlass that had a sword on the hilt that would go and launch fireballs at you, and they would kind of keep the players on their toes by having them go and do acrobatics from hook to hook and stuff. And I think these bosses have a lot more character this shot around than they did in DKC. Like, he kind of pops out of lava and he's ready to fight, and he's like a lot more aggressive, and so it's really, really nice to actually see a boss like this. And then they make him chase you through the hooks and stuff, and you go down, hit him with a cannonball, and then it's back through the hooks again, and it's just a very active boss fight, and it's something that I've greatly appreciated as the years have gone by. It's just really, really fun. It's not too easy, it's not too hard. If you make a mistake, you actually feel like you're the one who made the mistake. It doesn't feel like it's poorly done. So I actually really like this level. It kind of goes back to really well done backgrounds, and I really like the music that they did for this level as well. The music really kind of stuck with me from DKC2. It felt really nice. It felt really soulful. It's stuff that I found myself pausing the game to listen to. Like sometimes I would go and I would pause it and I would just listen to it. So now that I am respawned and we're going and doing this again, the manual barrels actually make a comeback. Except now they have a timer on them, which is really, really nice. I mean, personally, I'd rather have no timer at all so I can do it right, but they try to keep the barrels active and stuff. Like, they don't want you hanging out in the barrels forever, and I think it's, like, really, really nice that they try to encourage the player to have a little bit more precision and stuff. Unfortunately, that has a tendency to get in the way with me because I can't always see what I'm doing. I can't always see that white ring around the rim there. The enemies continue to be original in this particular segment of the game and stuff. I mean, the flying haunted coat was really nice, and of course the wasps make a return, and then the rats just feel like they belong there naturally, which is really, really nice. I like how they keep the pirate theme, how this particular section of the game has like a sunken pirate ship in it, which is really, really nice. I like how they did the barrels here as well, how they're static and you just lean into them and stuff, and it's a lot easier to play, I think. So this style of level where the animal goes and lights your path has made a comeback for DKC2. Glimmer is some kind of lanternfish, I believe, I could be wrong. But he basically lights your way throughout the entire level and stuff, and then the same issue that I had with DKC and the constant flashing from Squawks holding that lantern, it makes a comeback for DKC2, and I kind of struggle with this level a little bit. It gives me migraines if I move around too much. And then, of course, I'm always at a risk for a seizure on top of it. So initially, when I first started doing this level on the previous run, I was really struggling with it. I didn't really feel like I was getting better at it and stuff, and I had to learn to exercise a lot of patience with it. The Kongs being more agile this time around really, really helps, because with the other game, it felt like, since they were so sluggish, I was constantly doing micromanagement when it came to movement. But since things are a lot more fluid in DKC2, I feel like that's not so much an issue. Even going up and down feels less sluggish. It feels a lot more fluid than what it should be, essentially. The enemies have a lot better pacing as well. They're a lot more thoughtful with enemy placement, so whenever you get hit, it kind of feels like it's your fault, because now they just go and they broadcast it a lot better, I think. They really kind of catered to the fact of that 4:3 aspect ratio, you know. So they were like, okay, well, we need kind of slower enemies this shot around, maybe things that are like less aggressive and stuff. You could tell that they learned a lot of lessons from Donkey Kong Country. I like how they use bananas more intelligently. They shot around, like they do a much better job of using bananas to guide you and stuff. Sometimes they're just lines of bananas that you can follow. Other times, as you saw there a little bit ago, it's like an arrow that kind of points you in the right direction and stuff. Enemies don't really feel too fast or too slow. They feel just right. Everything feels like it's been tweaked and tuned until it has a really good flow to it. And I think this is why Donkey Kong Country 2 is the most popular out of all of them. It was a common sense approach to game design, essentially, and it's really weird because Donkey Kong Country 2 remedies pretty much every issue that DKC had, but with later installments like Donkey Kong Country 3, it brought back existing issues that Donkey Kong Country had. So it creates kind of a weird experience. And I think that's why Donkey Kong Country 2 kind of stands out at the top, because it improves on everything that's already great while rectifying older issues that the other games had. It feels kind of like a monolith of sorts. It stands out so much. So I really like the flow of this level. I hate that enemy right there. I think he's a pain in my ass. I've died to him more than anything else. But, no, I actually really liked this level a fair bit because it has really good flow to it. Like, you can literally bounce from enemy to enemy, land on the cattail there, and then just, keep going forward and stuff. I don't ever really feel like there is this really kind of epic pause that much. I mean, there are some areas that you're going to pause briefly in to be able to get to that crockhead, but I feel like the whole level, it flows very smoothly for what it is. Levels like this, you would kind of expect to, stop, hit the barrel, then, wait, hit the barrel again maybe, but with this one, it's like a real brief pause, you just keep pushing forward and stuff, and it feels very, very buttery, which is really nice. I feel that platforms in general, platformers in general should feel really, really buttery. When they start to feel janky and when they don't really have good flow, they don't really feel like they're particularly fun to play. I think with this level, they kind of highlighted the best attributes of Donkey Kong Country in general, which is really smooth transitions mashed up with bouncing from point to point. Sometimes it's on a cattail, sometimes it's from enemy to enemy. It just feels really good. So this level does something entirely new, which is really, really nice. Typically, when you go and you have like an animal enemy, or an animal enemy, sorry, an animal that you use to fight against enemies, you ride that animal. The thing that I like about DKC2 is sometimes you have the ability to become the animal. And I really, really like that. You know, like they really kind of went above and beyond with a lot of your animal buddies that you get in this game, I think. It's really, really nice that you can transform into them now and actually bounce around the level and stuff. It actually greatly reminds me of Cameo, because Cameo did the same thing, you know, where you could shapeshift and stuff, and it was always really, really fun to play as these characters. I feel a lot of these characters are iconic, you know, you can pretty much recognize them anywhere and stuff. I think it's really, really fun to just bounce from enemy to enemy, and it creates like a lot of fun in the game, and it feels very, very fluid. The only thing that I never really cared for about the snake is that it takes a hot second to actually get his bounce going if you're trying to reach like an upper area. So you literally have to sit there and you have to warm him up before you go and do like a really huge jump, and I just wish it was a little bit shorter, because with later levels it almost feels like it's not fast enough. I mean, it's nice in some aspects because it keeps the tension on, but in other aspects it's like I just wish it was a little bit more fluid. But no, I feel that all the animal transformations are done really, really well and stuff. They handle really, really well. They're super fun. They don't get old. It's just fun to bounce around. It puts a big smile on my face every time I see it. Like, even, it's so good that even when I'm bad at it, I don't get annoyed with it. It still feels nice, which is really hard to do in a game, I think. So this is going to demonstrate how long it takes for him to warm up. It feels kind of janky, you know, a little bit. Like, it's one of the few segments of DKC2 that actually feels janky. Because sometimes you'll be more than warmed up enough and he'll just like bounce in place, like kind of have like a stunted bounce, and then other times it feels really, really good and he jumps up real high almost immediately. These were issues that were later ironed out with Donkey Kong Country 3, with its animals that you would go and play as and stuff, but with DKC2, some of the animals just have issues, like the spider has web issues, and then the snake has animation issues sometimes, like sometimes they go through, sometimes they don't. It's just kind of rough, but I can't really expect too much out of it, I feel, with DKC2, because these are like new animals, essentially, you know, like they haven't really ironed out the overall method that they wanted and stuff. And I think another thing I didn't really like about the snake too much is like when you warm up for a jump, when you're ready and you're going and stuff, you're more or less committed to whatever trajectory you land on, more or less. Like, there's not a lot of air control with the snake and stuff, and he feels really, really sluggish. You know, on one end I don't really mind it so much because it kind of forces you to practice and get better and stuff, but on the other end I feel like that it would just be nice if he was just a little bit more responsive, just to like iron things out, you know what I mean? Give him a little bit more air control and stuff. And then right here used to be the bane of my existence because I wouldn't be able to time it correctly. And I would 9 times out of 10 die. Sometimes I'd get hit by that enemy there, other times I'd fall in the hole, sometimes I'd get nailed by this dude, you know, with his cannonballs and stuff. It wasn't always easy. So Slime Climb leaves a lot to be desired, I feel. It's not a bad level per se. I just don't really think that I enjoy levels where they try to constantly push you forward and push you up. I mean, the design for it is okay. It's not the best, it's not the worst. The one thing that I didn't really care for about it is instead of, there's segments where instead of just letting the slime continuing to creep and getting ahead of it, as you can see right there, it just rises to your current level. And, you know, I never really cared for it too much because I always viewed levels like this as trying to build a buffer between you and the movement upwards and onwards, you know, and it doesn't really feel too great. I feel like it doesn't really give you much time to do anything, so you see all of these little things on the side that you can collect, like the Kong letters and stuff, and as well as the DK barrels, and I feel like they never really give you any time with it, and it kind of, in many ways, I feel it kind of discourages exploration. Like, they want you to go and collect the DK coins and get the bonus rooms and stuff, but I feel like it never really gives you enough time to do so. It feels like you're either going to be grabbing one or grabbing the other, not grabbing both. And so that's one of the reasons why I never really cared for Slime Climb. Like, it's got good design. I just don't really care for things like this, and, you know, it's just something I kind of struggled with, I think. Oh yeah, I just failed that. So what I mean, you gotta pay attention to details. At that point, I just kind of said to hell with it and I guessed. So I really like Bramble Blast. I think it's really fun to play. It pretty much has everything that I pretty much wanted out of any sort of barrel level. I really like the design. I like how it's literally just vines of thorns and stuff, and I like how the barrels are done this shot around as well because they have limitations to them, and then they have a tendency to lock into place briefly when they rotate. I really love the music they actually did for this level. It's still one of my favorite pieces of all time. I've seen a lot of people go and do like orchestral versions of it and stuff. And I really like it. I really just enjoy it to the max and stuff. This level doesn't really feel like it asks too much or asks too little, you know, it feels like it asks just the right amount, which is really lovely. I like the contrast of the level a fair bit. The green against the blue has a tendency to poke out and it makes it a little bit more playable. We still have rotating barrels in this one, but it's not as bad, you know, like it doesn't really feel like it's unnecessary or excessive or anything of the sort, you know, it feels like they did just enough when they needed to, and as you can see, I'm still bad at traveling from barrel to barrel and stuff, and another issue that I kind of struggled with is sometimes the barrels with the arrows on them have a tendency to blur and stuff, so getting to them is a little bit of a challenge because sometimes they look like just another barrel to me, and so I have a tendency to stay in these areas a little bit longer than what I should. The rotation for the barrels this shot around is a little bit slower compared to what was in DKC, which is really nice. I enjoy this level a lot. I used to go back and play it all the time, and I got better at it, but the thing that mainly kept me coming back was literally just to hear the song for it. The song was just so good, and it's like, okay, well, if I want to hear it, I'm gonna have to play it. So I got really, really good as time went on for this particular level. I like the theming of it. I like how there's like these little planks all over the vines and stuff. It's just really, really nice, and I think it's an excellent piece of design. I like the aesthetic quite a bit. This boss is pretty interesting, I think. There's really not much to him. It's mainly just a lot of, whenever he lands, get out of his way and jump up. If not, you're going to be stunned. And then once you're stunned, he has a tendency to land on you. Eventually, he'll swing the club, then the barrel drops, and then he goes and jumps up in the air again. You wait until he falls down, bam, hit him with the barrel, and, rinse, dry, and repeat. In many ways, he kind of does the same thing that K. Rool does from the last boss fight of DKC. Eventually, he'll get to a point where, you hit him with a barrel, he'll start doing baby jumps, then long jumps, and, he's a very jumpy kind of boss, for lack of a better term. Then he speeds up a little bit halfway through the match as well, and it's interesting to see it reused from DKC. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I like how the boss looks. I like how he's like this really big buff croc that obviously missed leg day and stuff, and I mean, he's just really, really fun. He is indeed a fun boss fight, but I feel that the mechanic just really isn't the best. Yeah, you can just see him hopping around and stuff, and so this next area is my favorite area out of the whole damn game. It has everything that I love in it. So for this first area, they introduced a new mechanic, which is sticky segments on the hive that is lined with honey, apparently. And I think it's really weird. Like with Donkey Kong Country 2, Rare did a really good job of conveying weight, like conveying feeling in general. The honey is probably the biggest pain in my ass that I've seen in any game, but it does a good job of actually feeling like it's sticky. Like, once you're on it, you have a hard time getting off of it. So it makes platforming kind of hard because you have to literally go, not only jump off, but manage to pull away from it on top of it. So these hive levels, they're not bad, they're not great. They're really interesting, I feel, with how they go about doing things. The background is really, really nice. I like how you have like all the animated baby wasps and stuff, and they're always just kind of like looking around, and I like how they did it. It feels appropriate for what they're trying to do in these levels. It's loaded with honey, it's sticky, it's hard to traverse. The only thing that I didn't really care for about it really is it washes out as an extreme shade of yellow, to me, so I kind of have a hard time navigating, and, there's like little segments where you'll literally see me getting stuck, like legitimately getting stuck, and so it's kind of, it's nice. It's nice that they paid attention to it and stuff. Yeah, it's a pain to traverse at times, but it's nice to see that they paid that much attention to it. It's kind of funny to like go and jump on the wall and then just like stick to it. You can literally just hang out there. you won't ever fall off. You just literally stick there. And then jumping here is a pain as well because, again, they really nailed that feeling of stickiness. You know, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't really feel like it's too much or too little. It just feels like the right amount. I always felt that it was kind of interesting that with the spider, you know, it doesn't get stuck in the honey like at all. I always thought that was kind of strange and stuff. Like you would seriously think that since this is a eight-legged creature wearing sneakers and stuff, that it would just have a hell of a time going and trying to get through these sections that are super sticky and stuff. On one end, I'm actually kind of glad that they didn't do it, because I'm pretty sure that after getting the spider and then trying to navigate an area this sticky and actually having the spider adhere to the stickiness in general, I'm pretty sure it would have been rage-inducing. You know, I'm pretty sure it would have broken the game to a certain extent. Definitely would have made it a worse title, I feel. You know, so I think it's a good idea that they actually went and they kept the agility and the ability to traverse pretty much anything and anything and everything with the spider in general, and I really just enjoy it, I think. You know, just playing as him in general, even though it's kind of rough sometimes, it's really fun, and, you know, just it never feels like it's rage-inducing, which I think is kind of important with a game in general, you know, well, platformer in general. Some games are meant to be rage-inducing, like Dark Souls and stuff, but with platformers, I don't feel like the player should be really struggling against it excessively. I mean, it's good to have challenge and stuff, but it's bad when the challenge comes from poorly thought out things, not generally deliberate intent. So for a while, I didn't really know how to use the spider correctly. I still ignore a lot of it, for the most part. You can press up or down to actually guide where his webs go. His attack webs, you can do the same thing. You can do it as well with the platform webs that he shoots and stuff, which is really, really nice. It gives it a certain level of utility, I find. So, like, if you're stuck in one specific spot and you're like, okay, well, obviously I can't go down there to spit the web and then go and, you know, go down there and make a platform, you can just literally aim up, aim down. It was a really nice touch, I think, and it kind of reminds me how much thought they put into the game overall. I mean, I think that with platforming games, utility largely is key. You know, like with platforming games, the key idea behind it is how well you can actually go around and how well you can traverse the environment while dodging and defeating enemies and everything else. It's pretty much platforming 101, I think. So, I've never really been a huge fan of these porcupines. They're a pain in my butt, and I'm more than willing to admit it. The porcupines actually kind of feel like they're out of place in this level. Like, it feels really weird. Like, the spider, I can understand. Insect, okay. The wasps, okay. But the porcupine just feels really, really strange, I think. So the style of design with the writing something while collecting objects throughout the air and stuff makes a return in DKC2. It's a lot funner this shot around. I like the carnival theme for this particular area. It's one of my favorite areas in the entire game. This really reminds me of Trick Track Trek, where you have to go through and, you know, you have to go and ride the skull on the wheels for the roller coaster, and you have to grab things to go and be able to open doors and stuff. It definitely has Trick Track Trek vibes from DKC, and they use it a lot in Donkey Kong Country too. You know, sometimes it's to open doors, other times it's for like a timer, and so we see it a lot. So we see another variety of the defeat the enemy leveling stuff. I like how they try to keep it fresh. They're like, okay, new environment, new enemy, new style of defeating enemies, you know, let's go. They did a really good job with it. Like, I never really, throughout my entire time on DKC 2, I never really felt like I was reliving things too often. I felt like it was always pretty fresh for the most part, which I think is actually kind of important for a game because you want to introduce enough familiar stuff to go and have a game be comfortable and familiar, but you want to sit there and you want to have enough new things to keep the player engaged to help fight off boredom. And I think DKC2 does a really good job with this. You know, like, you can see it right here, specifically where they kind of did the whole trick, track, trek thing, except, you know, instead of collecting gas cans and stuff, they're like, okay, well, you know, you're at a roller coaster at the carnival and you're collecting barrels so you can go and, you know, open doors on the track, and it was really, really nice. It doesn't ever feel like it's moving too fast or too slow. Pacing is actually pretty good. You know, it feels as it should, which is really, really lovely, I think. So Bramble Scramble, for the most part, is just a rehash, except this one has more ropes disguised as vines and less barrels and stuff. They managed to reuse the previous level pretty well in terms of like theming and stuff, but they have enough new stuff here to literally keep it fresh. So instead of going around being shot from barrel to barrel, you're still going from the occasional barrel, but now it's mainly a heavy manual platforming segment. So it's really, really nice to see that they're like, okay, we can take an old level and shake it up. I think that was kind of one of the big issues with DKC, is I would see cave levels all the time. They wouldn't really mix it up too much. Like, they really didn't start mixing it up until later on in the game with one of the last areas of the game. But with DKC 2, it's almost like they kind of sat down and said, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to recycle a bit, but we're also going to add enough new stuff for it to be really, really fresh and very entertaining. One thing that I always thought kind of poked out to me with this level is, so you're going ahead and you're riding around on squawks and stuff, which is all well and good. I just thought it was very, very strange how with the Kongs, if you go and you touch any of these thorns, you're pretty much dead at that point. You know, so naturally the game tells you, hey, you know, don't touch the thorns, but I thought it was really weird that with squawks, as soon as the Kongs are on them, you can literally drag all of them across the thorns, and it literally just doesn't damage them at all. But yet, if you fly upwards and your face meets the thorns, you know, you lose a Kong, and that's pretty much it. I don't know if it was intentional design, or if it was just like simple oversight issues, you know? So I always thought that was kind of silly. It's like, ah, yes, you know, if I step on any of these thorns, I'm dead, but wait, let me grab a parrot, and I can drag myself as much as I want across them. I always thought it was very, very silly and stuff. So this is one of the first race levels in DKC, or DKC, sorry, DKC 2. And it's actually done really well. I was just really bad at it. Initially, when I was learning how to do this level, I was grossly unaware of that boost barrel that is in back of you. That boost barrel makes this entire level effortless to a certain lesser extent. The only thing that I really kind of struggle with this level is when you use the boost barrel, you're moving so fast that sometimes you do not have time to pay attention to the signs that are coming down the track. And since it's a 4x3 game, the main issue you're going to be running into is it hits a little too soon. So sometimes I would find myself jumping out of nervousness, mainly. I'd be like, oh my god, is there a gap coming up? And I would jump. And then sometimes as I would land, the gap would be coming up for real, and I wouldn't have enough time to jump again. So I would go, die, and I would just continue to make the mistake and stuff. That's why I wish some of these games were made with widescreen in mind. I mean, yeah, widescreen wasn't so much a thing back then, but sometimes with as fast as these signs would pop up, it would just be a straight painful endeavor to literally go and be like, oh, okay, you know, see it fast enough and then be expected to jump afterwards. But this level is still really enjoyable. It's another level I'd find myself getting on the game to go back and actually go and play, because it's just fun racing these guys, you know, racing them, landing on them, getting them out of the way. It's just a lot of fun from start to finish, I feel, and the music is very fitting. Has somewhat of a little bit of a jazzy feel to it and stuff, and it's really fun to listen to. It's not as good as like some of the other songs in DKC2, but it's still really fun, I think, and I really enjoyed it. You know, there's not really a whole lot in DKC2 that I didn't really enjoy. I mean, it felt like a really complete package from start to finish, and I never really got tired of it or anything. It was just always fun to load up the game and be like, alright, you know, what are we going to do today? And it just felt really nice, really smooth, really familiar a lot of the time. So I was kind of surprised that the swamp level actually made a reprise at this point in the game. It didn't really make like a lot of sense to me. Like, I can understand the beehives to a certain lesser extent because of the setting that we're currently in, but a swamp didn't really ever feel like it kind of belonged. Like, I can understand the previous area where, like, the ship was sunken in the swamp and, you know, there was, like, theming behind it and stuff, and it made sense. But with this one, I feel they just kind of tossed it in to toss it in to kind of break up the monotony and stuff. But it was just really weird how they did it. And there's not really much to this level, I find. It's just kind of going and platforming and jumping from platform to platform while dodging a whole mess of vultures, and it just felt really weird. you know, it almost kind of felt like it didn't really belong to a certain lesser extent, and I didn't really care too much for this collect the stars bonus room either. Like, while mounting the Kongs on each other's shoulders and stuff actually feels very fluid, it's really weird trying to control them in the air because it's like very, very sluggish. So I never really cared for it too much. You know, like, mounting the Kongs on each other's shoulders doesn't really play too much of a role in this game, thank God, but it just felt really, really sluggish. So this area particularly shares the same pretty good platforming segments that the swamp area had as well, like in the previous area of the game. It just felt really, really good how they did it and stuff, and a lot of that still carries over to this level, which is really nice to see. It doesn't really feel like they kind of half-assed any of it. I don't really care for a lot of the bonus rooms and how they did it. Specifically with this, what is it? With this cannonball, sometimes if you'd run into the enemy with it, even though the enemy was supposed to die, you know, you would still take damage and fail the area in general, and so you'd have to go back and do it again, and it didn't really feel super duper amazing. I wasn't really a fan of it too much. So I feel that throughout this level, as it goes on, a lot of my impatience has a tendency to show through. I think a large portion of it is nervousness, because while I do enjoy doing the long plays and stuff, I think one of the main issues that I had with doing these was the simplistic fact that every single time I'd go to do a long play, I would just be scared shitless of making a mistake or screwing up, and then eventually I just kind of threw caution to the wind and said to hell with it. So this appears to be another stereotypical kind of hive level a bit. You know, it's basically pretty much the same as all the others, except the ending is a little bit different and stuff, but it's pretty much the same thing you're going to see in all the other hive levels. You know, go get stuck on the honey, traverse the wall, you know, the barrels make a comeback here, which, again, I've never really been like a super huge fan of the rotating barrels and stuff. I mean, it can be done, I just don't really care for it. I don't really think this descent area was done really well either, because you never really can see far enough down without taking a substantial amount of risk. So more of my impatience kind of shows through a bit because I just don't really like the barrel segments that much, and this enemy turns around, and I've always had issues with Cutlass. I used to sit there and just blame it on his hitbox because his hitbox is a little bit bigger than what it's supposed to be. And then eventually I just kind of came to terms with it and realized I was just bad at fighting him. He's a cool character. I like his design and stuff, but I don't really like fighting him because he's really, really quick, and there have been instances where he'll come rushing in off the side of the screen as well and damage the hell out of you, and you never see him coming. Like, you really don't. And it's kind of like a tougher thing, I think. So I kind of struggle with this level a little bit. The stickiness doesn't so much bother me. It's mainly like trying to see throughout all of the yellow and the orange that's kind of blurring together and stuff. And I took my ass kicking on this level for a fair bit. You know, I just kind of kept going back and kept doing it over and over again. You're gonna find that in a lot of these DKC long plays and stuff, that I kind of keep going back over and over and over again. A lot of people had suggested that I just go cut the footage and stuff, but I like to show the entire run. I don't really like making edits unless I have to. I like to just have like one raw piece of footage. Normally when I do these videos, the endings get cut off because nobody wants to see like the beginning video for the game again, and then nobody wants to see the desktop that I have running on my computer before the game officially, starts up and gets running and stuff. So I have a tendency to just chop the ends off, and then the rest is just raw footage. I've considered it for a really long time, I think, going and just doing advanced editing to go and keep the videos smaller and stuff, but I kind of feel like it takes away from it a little bit. There's not too many people that do raw runs with mistakes and all and stuff, so I kind of want to keep it as a raw run. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that do really good editing. There's a lot of people out there that are like really, really good, super, MLG pro gamers and do the runs super fast with no deaths and stuff, but I wanted to mainly go and I guess record the entire journey. Like I wanted to show people basically the entire process from start to finish, what it's like playing a game with super low vision and stuff, and I feel like editing kind of takes that away a fair bit, because when you edit, it doesn't really so much allow people to see your mistakes as much, and so it kind of feels like it loses a little bit of the spirit in that regard, because this entire line of videos is mainly just, oh hey, I can't really see, this is how I play games. So I decided to keep the entire format of just minimal editing and just have longer videos than normal. I mean, yeah, I'm not making the entire game in an hour and a half, but I think it makes for a much more interesting journey. So again, it's kind of interesting to see that the animals don't really stick to the honey or anything, they just kind of run through them. And again, I think it was probably the better design choice, because if all the animals just kept getting stuck left and right, it would have been horrible. So I pretty much shit my pants as a kid with this segment. I saw how big that wasp was, and I was like, oh, damn, dude. And I always thought it was a really cool scene how this wasp is just larger than life, and it's just coming at you, and you gotta run away from it, because there's no way that you can, pile up against it and stuff, and it was a hell of a thing. Like, it still gets me from time to time. So I felt that this boss is actually pretty unique. You get to play squawks and stuff, and it's really, really enjoyable. It keeps in tradition with the Donkey Kong bosses all being animals for the most part, short of like a couple of them. I really like how they went about doing this boss fight, because it kind of commands a little bit of skill, because you can't just go and cough up nuts and stuff on the wasp and expect to damage them. Instead, you have to aim for that tiny little stinger on their butt, and then, that's the only way for you to damage them. So for the first round, you literally go and you trigger him, and then you're dodging all of the little barbs that he's firing at you and stuff, and it's pretty much a game of chicken while trying to do a little bit of precision aiming and stuff, and I like this fight. I'm not good at it, but I do like it. It is enjoyable. So for stage 2, the boss literally just surrounds themselves with the rest of the the rest of the hive and stuff, which it makes sense, and then you go and you can damage them, but the rest of the hive doesn't come back to literally help them, so it's literally a clear-cut case of having them follow you around kind of at high speed while you go and try to hork nuts all over them to defeat them and stuff. It was probably one of the better boss fights in DKC 2. So Gloomy Gulch is my second favorite area of the game. They do some pretty original stuff here, and I like it. I don't think it's as cool as Kremland, but it's still enjoyable. I really like it a lot. I like how they have like these ghost ropes that kind of appear then disappear, and it forces you to like time your jumps and stuff and to pay attention to the environment that you're in. I really, really like that. It kind of forces you to have some skill and stuff, and I really think that that's one of the great things about how Rare kind of develops their games, because a lot of the skill doesn't really feel tedious, it just feels like this very soft kind of learning process. Whereas a lot of developers back then would kind of throw the difficulty in your face rather rudely, and they'd be like, you gotta get better, looking at like Ninja Gaiden and Contra and a couple of the other games. Donkey Kong Country also demands a lot of skill in some areas, but it teaches you in a very soft fashion. Like this area, the ropes aren't too fast, aren't too slow. They start off, not as, fast as the ropes in the later level, but it slowly builds up to it, which is really, really nice. Like if you die on one of these ropes, it pretty much feels like, your fault for trying to hustle through it a little too fast. But I like how the ropes just kind of, they kind of spawn in front of you and it just feels really, really smooth. So Haunted Hall is another collect the item style race where you have to collect barrels to go and increase your timer. We have barrels that increase your timer, we have barrels that subtract from your timer, and so the overall goal is to have enough time at the end of that specific segment to where the ghost in back of you doesn't kill you. And, that's pretty much the entire gameplay loop for this particular level. I feel like this particular Collect the Stars segment is quite literally on rails, no pun intended. You don't really have to do anything but jump and jump and jump. It more or less plays itself at that point. And so for a lot of it, it's just you go and you hop, and there are a couple of areas that are like this. This isn't the only one. But it becomes more common later on. So you literally go, and as you go further in the level, the platforming becomes a little bit more demanding. So it's like, collect as many barrels as you can, make sure you don't screw up and collect a red one. It's a really fun level. I like how the rest of it is designed like a haunted house. You got old books in the background and stuff, and I really, really missed that about this level. I wish I could still see it, but last time I checked, it has like books in the background and stuff, the occasional lamp. It just looks really, really nice. I really miss it, like, a lot. The design work for DKC 2 was just really, really good. But towards the end of the level, they kind of ramp things up a fair bit, like you start going a little bit faster, and then the timer also gets shorter, so you can't really afford to screw up. So basically everything you learned in the first 30 seconds of the entire level is on display here. So the game literally kind of forces you to get a little bit better, but it does so in a very gentle fashion. Ooh, barely made that. So Gusty Glade is a little bit of I wouldn't so much call it a weird level. It kind of highlights what I really didn't like about some of the aspects of DKC. So the gimmick for this level is literally, time your jumps with the gust. That way it can accelerate you forward and you can make it over like large pits and stuff. And it's an okay level. It's not the best, it's not the worst. It's one of those little middle tier levels that has like a really basic gimmick to it and stuff. I always felt like the timing for the gust sometimes was always like a little bit off. I never really figured it out. I mean, I've played the game with a wired controller on an old CRT, and it felt like the timing was off back then, and you fast forward 25 plus years and it hasn't changed any. you know. So going through the level is a rather straightforward affair. You just kind of go and you jump and you try to time it to the best of your ability, but oddly enough, it doesn't really, like, I can't quite put my thumb on it, but it doesn't really feel super fun. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really, like, all the other levels, like, even when they're kind of annoying at times, they still feel pretty fun. But with this one, it doesn't really feel fun. It doesn't really feel unfun. It feels really monotonous to a certain extent. You know, because you're just, that loop is like, oh, time your jumps and then go across, then time it and then go across it. The loop doesn't really feel groundbreaking or anything. I mean, the animation for it looks really, really nice. You know, the environment looks gorgeous as usual, but some of the areas just don't really they just don't really grab me. There's just something about it. And then the segment with the barrels is really easy. Again, just time it and go. So the hive level actually makes a comeback and stuff, which is really, really nice. The thing that I like about it the most is that it actually does something new. So we have a what looks like a purple version of Squawks, and the entire idea with this is to navigate the entire hive as carefully as possible to minimalize death. And so there's wasps all over the place and stuff, and they still, like, again, in typical rare fashion, what they did is they took a familiar area, they kept enough of it to make it seem familiar, but they added whole new aspects to it and stuff to make it very engaging. So with this, there's actually a large degree of control, strangely enough, with the parrot. You can press down to go down a lot faster, but also if you hold up, it slows your descent a lot. You can't actually fly back up, but you can definitely slow your descent. So a lot of this level is literally just being patient, something I don't have, and then taking your time with it, essentially, and just going and navigating to the best of your ability. So the upper levels of this level, they teach you basically how to do it and stuff, and but as you go down to the lower levels and stuff, they kind of demand more and more and more, so it actually kind of forces you over the course of a single level to get better at this mechanic. And so these levels are actually short enough to where replayability or repeating things is not super horrible. And I think that's kind of one of the key things with a lot of these older platformers is the good ones didn't really overstay their welcome. They were short enough to be extremely replayable, but long enough to feel like your time was well spent. And I really appreciated that about Donkey Kong Country 2 in that regard. So the rest of the level is just transferring from one parrot to another parrot, and then as you can see here, they up the ante by going and forcing you to descend slower, and that way you don't hit anything, and you have to have a lot more precision, especially in this segment, how they up it from 1 to 2. Like, they give you smaller and smaller gaps for error, which is really nice, but they don't really like throw it in your face or anything. This is what I kind of like about a lot of Rare's games, is it's not this sudden spike, it's this progression of growth with your skill, and it just kind of gets better as time goes on. But the rest of the level, it's just pretty much the same old stuff, squeezing the parrot into really small areas, and then, trying to successfully transition the Kongs to another parrot without having to worry about losing any of them. This area right here is pretty straightforward. It's just hold up on the D-pad and, you know, wait until there's an opening and stuff. And it's not overly challenging or anything. You know, it's not as hard as like the upper levels I find, but it's still nice that they try to do new things with it. And as always, we have to stop in and do the whole trivia game because I just can't get enough of those free lives. I mean, I'm going to be using the hell out of them later. You know, like it looks like I have a lot of them now, but wait until later, I'll start taking my licks. So I didn't really care for Web Woods too much. Um, I personally feel that it aggravates a couple of the issues that the spider has. So this is a very platform intensive level, and so you're going to be going as the spider, and you're going to be creating a ton of platforms non-stop, more or less. And I didn't really care for it, mainly because of the issue of sometimes there's some irregularities with how the platforms disappear. You know, sometimes they're out of order and stuff, and it's kind of hard when you're trying to go across these huge chasms that they have you cross, and you're trying to do so in a speedy manner with barrels coming at you and just like all kinds of stuff. So I feel that with all the enemies and stuff, and with how the level is structured at some points, it becomes very painful, especially with how sometimes these platforms would open up prematurely. I legit thought that my controller was broken for a while, and then I would try another controller and I would still have issues with the platforms opening prematurely. I know that the segments where they have the enemy standing above you, they can be really, really painful. Even if you arc the web upward a lot of the time, it becomes kind of a painful ordeal because it doesn't always hit. You know, it's just really, really rough in some areas. And there are other areas where you have to go and slow platform like this, and it just kind of gets rougher as the level goes on, but it doesn't really feel like it's rough from intentional difficulty. It feels like it's rough from a little bit of bugginess and some poor planning, you know, especially when you get to the segments where there are some wasps that, you know, just give you a solid run for your money and stuff. And I mean, some of it's really, really good, others are, like other segments of it is really, really bad. It feels like a mixed package, I think. You know, I've never really been like a super huge fan of it per se. I wasn't a huge fan of this segment either because, you know, you literally go and you are forced to hustle through it as fast as you can, and you run the risk of getting hit. Like, it should feel exhilarating, but it just kind of, for me at least, it kind of feels like it's tedious. And I don't really care for that too much about this particular level. I don't feel it's inherently a bad level, it's just I feel that its design aggravates a couple of pre-existing issues. So I was stuck on this level for a little bit of a hot minute. You know, like I wasn't the best at this level, but I just never really, I never really cared for it per se. So it feels very tedious to go across these huge chasms like this. And I know with the previous recording I did for DKC2 before I shot this one, I was having such bad issues with the webs opening prematurely that I literally was stuck on this particular level for 20 minutes. And then eventually I just scrapped it. I did a whole nother run and stuff because certain things just really weren't lining up correctly, you know, so it became kind of like a really huge challenge. And um, yeah, it was pretty shitty having to scrap the run and stuff because I was just adding so much time onto the clock. I try to keep these runs under 3 hours because anything above that and the time it takes to upload it becomes a really huge pain. So I kind of had to like go and hustle through with this. This particular segment would have been easier if I would have done directional aiming, but I wasn't really thinking about it, which is a mistake that I made, you know. So I was kind of going and I was trying to hustle through, and in the back of my mind, you know, I'm not even really thinking about, oh, you know, I can do directional aim up or down, you know, to make my life a little bit easier. I kind of forget about it a little bit, especially with like a lot of these older games. I think the newer games kind of ruined us to a certain extent because it constantly reminds you that, oh, you can do this or that. Like, they have a tendency to announce it a lot, but with these older games, unless you had the manual, you didn't really know. You know, like, I think Rare was kind of trend-setting a little bit with how they did it. Like, they would tell you to press, like, A or Y, or, you know, they would give you the clue in Bananas and stuff, but, like, they wouldn't go as far as to say, oh, hey, you can aim up or down with your webs. So, unless you had the manual, a lot of it literally kind of goes over your head a fair bit, so you kind of struggle with it a little bit. And it's one of the things I think that kind of changed as gaming evolved, because now you have like tutorials built into the game and stuff. Like, games don't even ship with manuals anymore. I can't remember the last time I saw a game ship with a manual, like, no joke. So for these older games, you know, a lot of the time they needed the manual because you would go and, you know, it would explain everything. I don't think we would see a full-scale tutorial on a lot of these older games because memory was extremely limited and stuff, you know, so they were reliant on like a 20-30 page most of the time in black and white manual to be able to figure out how to play the game. So most of it is memory, which is nice and stuff. I didn't really particularly care for this area in general, this kind of having things fly at you while you're trying to micromanage platforming. I felt was always kind of a nightmare and stuff, and I got stuck on it. You know, like I said, I'm not terribly good at this particular level or anything, but I feel that some of the design choices were just kind of bad on top of it. You know, and a lot of the web balls have a tendency to travel very slowly, so sometimes when you want to go and make a platform and get the hell out of Dodge, you don't always have that option. And so when you have wasps that are moving a little bit quicker than you, you kind of just sit there and you're like, oh man, I need to move a little bit faster. But I find that the spider in general just really is not an overly quick character. Like, he has moments of quickness, but he is not inherently quick. So at this point in the run, it was mainly a point of just determination. My vision was struggling pretty hard with like a lot of the fog and stuff, you know, well, mist, whatever you'd like to call it. So instead of just going and scrapping the run, I literally said, fuck it, I'm going to keep doing it until it's done, more or less. And so I buckled down and, you know, I kind of tried to be a little bit more patient with it. I have a tendency to rush through levels that I don't really care for too much, and it's a pretty bad problem with me. Like, if I just do not like something, I will rush through it and half-ass it as much as I can, and that doesn't really work with Donkey Kong. I find, like, some levels literally just demand your patience, and you have to give it, you know. So eventually, at that point, I just kind of remembered, oh hey, I can spit up and down. So it wasn't really like super horrible or anything. It was like me just going and saying, oh okay, well we're gonna go ahead and just keep pushing and just keep pushing and and then aim down, of course. And it's amazing, how much remembering something will help you. But I think like when I had done this run, I hadn't played Donkey Kong Country 2 in a very long time. So, when you go and you haven't done something in a while, you have a tendency to forget. Like you forget like a lot of the stuff that you're going to need to progress through the level, and so it becomes, I feel personally, it becomes a trial by death. Like how many times are you going to have to die before, you get it, essentially. And so when you go and you do trial by death, you're kind of like, I'm just going to keep pushing and, just going to keep getting it until I actually get through it. And, it does pay off. Determination in general does pay off. And I started trying to haul it a little bit faster towards the end here, and that web kind of closed up prematurely. It wasn't really great, and it kind of highlights the issue of webs disappearing out of order sometimes. So, but I managed to make it through, and, I was in a rush at this point, but I was like, oh man, I need to slow down a little bit, because if I don't, I'm probably going to die. And so when you get to the end, it just feels good. You pop the barrel, Diddy plays on his boombox a little bit, and then he just kind of gets the hell up out of there. So Creepy Crow is a rehash of the crow from the very first area of the game. This one is a little bit different. So what they have you do is you need to dodge, what is essentially ghost vultures, and then wait for the real vulture to show up so you can go and jump, land, and then it'll summon a barrel. The main issue that I have with this particular fight is the crow has a tendency to blend in with the background. And it was very kind of an aggravating thing for me, and I just didn't really care for it too much. So it's, while it's a rehash, I will give it credit where credit is due. It does do a couple of new things, You're not fetching eggs anymore. Now you're doing platforming while dodging eggs that are, falling at you and everything else. And it's not bad, it's not great. It feels pretty tedious and stuff, and it's very easy to actually go and do the boss. It's literally just going and jumping and evading and jumping and evading, and then when the real one shows up, go stomp him and, turn around, hit him with the barrel, rinse, dry, repeat. It's a very straightforward process, I think. It's another one of those levels where, like, the tedium for it really kind of killed it for me. I just kind of wanted to rush through and be done with it and stuff, but I didn't really get that opportunity because the way that they have the overall level paced out and stuff. So for this particular level, there's really not much to say about it. The pufferfish actually take kind of center stage with this. They become the dominant enemy of this particular level, so you see them like all over the place. You get to transform into Ungarde, which is actually very, very lovely. And I adore it a fair bit. I like transforming into the animals in general. I think it's like very cute and very fun, and I always have a really, really good time with it and stuff. This one has a glacial look to it, which is really, really nice, and it's fun to navigate and stuff. Ungarde actually feels more responsive this shot around, but he still kind of suffers from going up and down very sluggishly, like super sluggishly. And so it's really kind of weird. I find that combat with him is kind of hit and miss. Sometimes I'll poke an enemy and it'll kill him outright. other times I'll stab an enemy and I'll take damage instead. It's very unusual with actually how they do it and stuff. And so I kind of go and I kind of struggle with it a little bit, you know, and it's just, I understand that it was like new stuff, you know, but it felt a little bit more rough than what it should, I guess, for lack of a better term. I mean, I still have a good time with it, it's still a fun level, but just going and doing some things, it kind of feels like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Ah, that charged up stab, that was so much fun. I thought it was funny as hell how that enemy got nailed at the end there as well. You know, it's like you can do fun stuff with a lot of these buddies that you can transform into and stuff. I always have a really good time with it. Charging up his stab is just way too good, but unfortunately, you know, we didn't get to that last platform. So I felt that this level was a little bit gimmicky as well. You know, like it goes back to the whole going with the breeze thing, except this time they try to combine the breeze-based gameplay with the extreme amount of control needed for the parachute panic. And so what winds up happening with a lot of this is like, okay, you know, you're being carried by the wind, but you're also expected to micromanage your movements and stuff. You can again control how fast you go up or down, essentially, with a lot of this with the directional pad, which is really, really nice. And then it combines that environment that I loved from Canon's Claim so much, except the crystals in the back of this one don't really appear to be as bright, but it's still a really nice environment and stuff, and it's a fun level to do, you know? Like, you can literally go and just glide up, and I think the animations that they did for the Kongs were very silly as well, just like super silly, and I laugh so hard every single time I do this level because the looks on their face are just like super silly, and you know, it really reminds me of why Donkey Kong Country 2 just kind of felt like a super good time from start to finish and stuff. You know, I never really got enough of it, you know, and it just feels nice. I think one of the things that kind of weirded me out about this level the most is it kind of exists in this strange duality of sorts. So on screen, when you turn your Kong, it appears that they're very responsive, but when it comes to actually moving from point A to point B and navigating around things, it actually feels like a very sluggish affair. So I feel that it's kind of misleading at times. You know, you go and you look at it and you're like, oh, you know, I'm turning very quick, therefore I should be moving quick. but the game doesn't really afford you that luxury because you move forward and backwards very very sluggishly. Moving up and down is a little bit speedier, but not by much really. It kind of reminds me of DK's movement a little bit for Donkey Kong Country, how it would be so sluggish and take so long to turn, but in this one it's like you're turning fast, it's just you're moving in that direction very very slow. So it feels really really strange. It's a great level, but things could have been done better, I think. So Castle Crush reminds me a lot of Slime Climb. It's still the gotta progress up towards a certain point because floor is advancing kind of thing, except this time you're literally sitting at ground zero and you gotta move around the environment and defeat enemies very very quickly, that way you don't get crushed. It was a pretty original level, I feel. I do enjoy it. I mean, I don't really I don't enjoy getting hit with a hook like that, but is it kind of reminds me how late in the game that they were still trying to do new things. Like Donkey Kong Country 2 ultimately felt like a commitment to trying something new almost every other level, which is really nice. It's not something that you see too often anymore. And I kind of miss it. Like I miss it a lot, actually, thinking about it. Because you don't see too many games that try to keep it fresh all the way up until the end. Like you typically see games, they go down and they establish like a certain set of mechanics and then they write out those mechanics until the end of the game. But with Donkey Kong Country and a lot of Rare's games in general, the entire franchise was more or less kind of like this, and it's just really really nice. I mean, yeah, I fail at it a fair bit, but it's still fun to do. It's still fun to like keep getting up and keep trying and like keep trying to put your best foot forward with it and stuff. This level demands a lot of attention, strangely enough. Like, you really have to pay attention to it. Like, I got kind of strange with this portion of the run, and I kept asking myself, I was like, okay, are there hidden areas? If so, where are they at? And so I kind of experimented a little bit. I'd like run towards like one corner and, get killed by it, and I think at this point in the run, I was kind of just like sitting there and going, okay, well, this is kind of becoming a little bit tedious. What can we do to kind of break up the monotony a little bit? Normally, when it comes to gaming, I can't really, strangely enough, I can't really sit down and go and play games for like an extremely long duration. That's why a lot of these quote unquote long plays are surprisingly short. The longest one that we have so far is Donkey Kong Country 3, and it's going to be a massive upload. It's going to be really long simply because I'm really bad at it. There's people that are speedrunning that game like very quickly, but for me, a lot of the mechanics kind of work against you, I found, at least, and it's why I believe that it's the weakest out of all the entries, that we've had so far. But no, with Castle Crush, a lot of it is just patience and time. Patience, time, and paying attention and stuff. I think it's kind of weird how the floor just kills everything. Because when you look at it, you evidently see, oh hey, there's a gap in between the foreground and the background where all these structures are kind of sinking into. So I always felt that it was like kind of funny how you would get trapped in it and you would die because technically speaking there would be a gap there for you to exist in, which I always thought it was pretty silly in that regard. It gets kind of funny like watching, the castle go and crush like a bunch of porcupines, like the animations that they have and stuff is just kind of funny a lot of the time. And the level itself, it actually is really nice. I like how the background actually has animations to it and stuff. We didn't really see that a lot, in SNES games. And then when we did see it a lot of the time, it wasn't really done particularly well. So, to see them do it this well and have it be this fun is really nice. Ooh, there we go. personally, I feel that I get lucky in this area. Because with a porcupine and like a little tiny croc chasing me, it's a little bit of a pain to literally sit there and try to roll through one and then turn around, jump, and step on another. And it's not, I wouldn't go as far as to call it overly painful, but it just feels kind of a little bit tedious because you're like, okay, I gotta run through this and then I gotta step on him, and you know, it's just kind of a hell of a thing, I think. I never really cared for the porcupine enemies too much in general. They kind of remind me of those larger crocs from the first game where you can't step on them as Diddy, you can only roll through them, and it was a hell of a thing, I think. But no, for this level, it's got like a really smooth progression and stuff. Right here is kind of tedious because you're jumping over multiple hooks and then switching sides, and you know, it kind of goes, has a tendency to go on and on, essentially. And so you're kind of sitting there and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm just jumping, and then there's all those porcupines at the end, and it's just kind of a hell of a thing, I think. But yeah, I think Castle Crush in general is one of those levels where it dominates really hard if you're not paying attention to it. And the problem that I have is my brain has a tendency to wander even while gaming. So I'll sit here and I'll be doing runs and stuff, and unless something is just like actively coming at me, you know, I have a tendency to kind of turn my brain off a little bit and stuff. So you know, I would go and I would stand on certain sections of this level and I would get a little too relaxed, you know, like quite literally a little too relaxed, and I would kind of stop paying attention a little bit. It's kind of an issue that I have with gaming in general. Like, if I don't go and constantly have something in my face, I just get a little too relaxed with it, and then something comes out of left field and nails me to the floor, and it's a hell of a thing, I think. I think this area right here kind of goes and it highlights that a little bit, because you have a porcupine coming at me followed by a smaller croc, and so you have to be actively engaged with it, because if you get a little too relaxed you're going to die from it, and it's a little bit of a hell of a thing, I think. So we're coming up on these hooks again, and again, it's kind of tedious because you jump up and swap sides and jump up and swap sides, and it's a little bit of an endurance match until you get to the end, and you know, they both get crushed and stuff. But it's I don't know, it's just, I don't want to say it's unfun. Like, the challenge is there, but I kind of just sit there and I look at it and I kind of groan a little bit. I'm like, God, man, this again. And there we go. We are at the end. So this is the level that I had brought up earlier in this video about how you use a seal to alter the, I guess, chemical structure of whatever liquid you're traveling on. So with this one, instead of cooling off lava, what it does is it freezes the top surface of the water to where you can run on it. And this one's actually really nice. I like how they did something new with it and stuff, and it was a heap of fun stepping on them, then quickly skittering across the ice to make sure you don't fall into the water and get nailed by Lockjaw. So this is one of my favorite levels of all time. It has a very relaxing melody to it and stuff, and it kind of continues Donkey Kong Country's tradition of not being like too much or too little, but just the right amount. And so I've actually kind of come to appreciate it, I think, as time has gone on, and it doesn't feel like a particularly hard level. I mean, yeah, you have like enemies walking towards you that you can only kill with barrels and stuff, but other than that, it's really really nice, you know. Of course, I get hit there, and I gotta worry about getting the hell out of dodge, and but no, it's really really fun, even though like I'm trying to hustle through it a fair bit. Like I try really hard to kind of push through it a fair bit, and again, patience and time is key with this game. Just so much fun skittering across the ice like this. Love it. It's fun ducking underneath the wasps as well. So Chainlink Chamber really isn't that bad. I actually enjoy it quite a bit. The weird thing is it's what I would call a high intensity sort of climbing level, because there's all these enemies on the chains and stuff, and you gotta quickly shimmy from one end to the other end while not getting hit by them and stuff. And then there's wasps later on in the level that can hit you very quickly, as well, as you can see right there. You gotta I find that you gotta pay attention pretty hard for this one. You can't really rush through it too fast. Like, if you're too slow, an enemy will kill you. If you're too fast, an enemy will kill you, especially right here. You can't just go and peel from top to bottom and stuff with it. It just really doesn't work like that. I mean, it's a nice concept, it just doesn't really work. Then dealing with the barrels as well is particularly challenging, because again, having to see those white rims on them just is kind of hard. This whole area kind of looked like a giant kind of a muddy mess because of the brown shading and everything else on it, and it was tough. Trying to go through this area as well wasn't particularly great to me, because you're going and you're trying to make it past all these wasps, and then I made the mistake of not even hitting the halfway point to the left there. I tried to hustle through it really really fast, because I was like, oh man, I'm not really digging this, but I find that it came back to haunt me really quickly. The game has a very odd way of punishing you, per se, for trying to rush through as fast as you can. So I made the mistake of not going and grabbing the halfway point, so I had to literally start from scratch. I get a little, I think with some runs, it's not so much a point of cockiness. I just kind of get to the point where it's like, okay, well, I don't really care for this. Let's go ahead and rush through it, and then so you start making mistakes like forgetting the halfway point, collecting DK barrels, things like that. So you go and you kind of have these issues, and so I think Donkey Kong Country 2 kind of tempers you a little bit. Like, it'll flat out punish you for trying to rush too fast or not paying attention. Like, they kind of expect you to use your brain a fair bit when going and playing these games, and sometimes I get in such a rush with it that I'll literally go and be like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and just peel through it as fast as we can, and then the game kind of gives you a reality check a fair bit, and it's real interesting how it goes about doing it. At least to me it does. It seems very interesting in that regard. And then not being able to see what's directly above you a lot of the time can be a pain, especially with the way that the camera moves. I mean, the camera is centered on the character, but sometimes it kind of struggles to track a little bit, I noticed. And so it doesn't really... I find that this game doesn't really encourage like super fast maneuvers and stuff. A lot of successful transitions from area to area is literally based around being able to have that memory, not generally response time. Oh, yes, these guys again. Jesus. Yeah, I finally remembered to get the halfway point here, and then instantly taken out because, again, really impatient with it. And then the funny thing is right across the aisle, there's a DK barrel that you can go and grab. See, it's like right here, you can literally go and grab it, but then this barrel croc, or whatever the hell his name is, literally just gets me in the corner there and just nails me to the floor. So right here was like a really huge challenge because when I was doing these initial runs, I didn't have any audio output through the speakers on my TV with the way that I had the MIDI driver set up. So basically what I had to do to fix the audio, well, to be able to capture audio on a Mac, is I went ahead and there was a plugin that you can actually go and download where what it does is it captures your internalized audio as a MIDI plugin. And what it allows you to do is actually export your audio that you have internally to have it applied to the current recording being done by QuickTime. So the main issue with this is the initial setup when I was reading the instructions for it, it blatantly pointed out that you would have to set up your internalized audio in a very specific way. I didn't know that I could actually include the output to my television as well. I was still learning at the time. So for these first 3 recordings, I literally had like next to no audio whatsoever. So that little segment where the cannonballs are coming down and stuff, I wasn't able to hear any of that. And unfortunately, audio is the only real way to pick that up. So I'd kind of struggled with it a fair bit, but with some tweaking and tuning, after I did the first 3 recordings, I had gone and tweaked and tuned it, and I learned that I can actually add other things to the MIDI output driver for the screen capture. So I found out that I could, literally go and output my speakers, well, output to my speakers as well, which was really nice, and it made the later runs for a lot of the games that I was working on a lot easier. But for these original recordings, audio does play a very important role in all of it, per se. So I kind of struggled with it, I think. You know, it's like you can't really see much, you can't really hear anything, so you just kind of struggle with it a fair bit. And it had gotten to the point where I was like, oh, geez, you know, this is a lot harder than, you know, what it should be. If I had audio initially, I think that things would have been a lot more smooth in terms of, like, how they progressed and stuff. You know, Donkey Kong Country forces you, well, all of them actually, force you to use, like, all of your senses and stuff. You know, like as far as seeing and hearing goes. But with this, it was like, oh, I can't see those cannonballs coming too well. I can't really hear them, so it was down to, okay, you know, which hits first, and then from there it's just alternating, I feel. Just from one side to the other. So towards the end here, I was still doing these bonus bonanza mini games and stuff. And the thing that was kind of strange about it is I had no real reason to actually go and do them. I mean, I had plenty of lives, I wasn't exactly hurting for them. I think that, you know, some things you just do because you enjoy them, like regardless of what kind of reward you would get and stuff. So with a lot of these, I was just like, oh, hey, you know, let's go ahead and go do it. And, you know, I didn't really have all the answers correct, you know, for like a lot of these and stuff, but I still enjoy doing it. You know, I think that's kind of like the hallmark of a good game is realizing, like, even when you're screwing up, you're still having fun. You know, there's not too many games that actually go and do that, and it's pretty nuts. But no, we're coming up on the end of the game quite literally, you know, and this last level here, oh god, Toxic Tower, I did not care for it at all because it was just such a chronic raging pain in my ass. Like, right off the bat, we're gonna have Slime Climb mashed up with, you know, having enemies, like, going and falling off real steep kind of ledges and stuff. Like, this is my least favorite level out of the entire game. You know, I don't really like the pacing of it. I don't really like how everything is set up. Like, right off the bat, that's a pretty steep jump, you know, and it doesn't really give you, like, a lot of time to screw around with it either. And so the argument could be made, oh, well, you just have to be skillful and stuff, which, you know, I'm sure that, you know, you have to, but it just feels like a lot of that was just really poor planning right off the bat. And so a couple of the issues with playing as the snake kind of come into play here, especially with how fast the slime itself actually advances. So right here, a lot of the time, you know, you would literally have to go and primer his super jump a lot quicker than that. You're going to be using his super jump a lot, but the thing is if you spend too much time on it, the slime advances too much. If you don't spend enough time on it, you don't really get the jump down pat, and then you do a stunted jump, which wastes more time. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't really like floor advancement style levels like this too much. It just kind of feels like an exercise of futility sometimes, especially with some of the inconsistencies that the game itself has. So I just kind of sat back and I was like, oh, okay, you know, this is what this is. And this level in general actually does some pretty cool things though, as well. Even though I don't like it, it still does some pretty cool things. You get to play as a wide variety of animals, which is really nice. Even though I don't really particularly care for the level, I still think it's a really cool attribute that it has, because it's like, oh, you're done playing as a snake, now it's time to go and, you know, play as the parrot. And they did a really good job with transitioning from one animal to the other, I think. You know, it's just like little things about this level that just really did not make me care for it too much. You know, it's like it feels like sometimes that little things can often feel like big things or even lead up to big things and stuff. It's kind of weird because I feel that the timing of the level kind of stacks on top of my impatience to a certain regard, and so like I'm trying to rush through the entire level while the slime's coming, and then I'm impatient on top of it, so what happens is I have a tendency to make a ton of mistakes right off the bat. And so it's a internalized problem, I think, that I've been kind of struggling with as a gamer. I don't think it's going anywhere. It's been a part of me for quite some time now. There's not too many games that I have like a huge amount of patience for, I guess. And so Donkey Kong Country, like any of them, really, they don't make that list, like any of it. And especially with them trying to do floor climb levels and everything else, because I just kind of try to charge through it, and I kind of struggle with it a fair bit. But yeah, the whole idea with the level is to literally just kind of keep climbing. We kind of start to see, I feel, some limitations of the engine, how when there's like a lot of enemies on screen, the engine will literally slow to a crawl kind of briefly and then bounce back a bit. But I don't think personally that it was like really game breaking or anything. It's just like a real quick kind of flash in the pan ordeal. So I always thought this section was actually kind of funny because you're expecting a boss fight, and then you just kind of show up and, DK is there, and then they just kind of take off with him and give you a free coin, and that's pretty much it. I always thought there was like a certain level of hilarity there that I appreciated a fair bit. So I actually, to a certain lesser extent, I actually love and hate this level a fair bit. I love the premise. I love the look. I like how they tried to shake it up. I like how they tried to do something new with it. But I hated the sense of urgency with it, essentially, because a lot of the time what would happen is, so this level, it kind of demands a race out of you towards the end, and you're racing this really just kind of ugly-ish looking crow that's all haggard looking and everything else. And so you literally have to go and race him through this area, dodging thorns and enemies and just like all kinds of stuff. I like the idea behind it, but the thing is the crow itself actually moves really fast, like super fast. And so trying to rush through, I found that on this level, because I'm trying to beat the race, essentially, I would make a lot of mistakes. So like we're starting right here and like see how fast he's kind of moving right out the gate. So what it boils down to is this specific section is like, oh, okay, we're gonna fly as fast as possible while killing anything that gets in our way as fast as possible, and going as fast as we can, and like it's just really, it feels like a high intensity thing. I can't remember what kind of stemmed me to practice this level, because I used to be really, really bad at it. And I thought that I would kind of be done with it once I had beaten it, but I remember I would go back and I'd practice it a lot, and just strange stuff. Another thing that I felt was kind of weird about this level is when you have Kongs on you, you don't go and you take no damage while they drag across the thorns, but for some weird reason, when you're playing as the parrot and stuff, you actually take damage regularly when dragging yourself across the thorns. And I always thought it was kind of a weird attribute of how they went about doing things and stuff. I mean, the level's still fun, it's still extremely playable and stuff, but it's just like little odds and ends kind of stuff that they go and they do, and it's just kind of strange, I guess. I do like the handling for this level in general. I think that Squawks handles quite beautifully in most regards. It's just mainly down to impatience and trying to get through the level as fast as you can. So a lot of these, deaths are literally mistakes that could be avoided. But since I'm impatient and also trying to run through the level, this is where a lot of my deaths come from. So at this point, when I was doing recordings, I was moving a little bit closer to the display because a lot of this looks like a blue and brown kind of haze, and it's like really hard to navigate. I think that if Squawks was any other color than green, I would have struggled with it a lot harder, you know. So I had actually considered, with all the mistakes that I had made on this run, I had actually considered, oh hey, do I want to scrap this? And, you know, do I want to start from scratch again? And I had decided not to at that point, I think. Like, I had gotten to the point where I was like, you know, it's like every time you make a mistake, you can't always afford to sit down and scrap it. Another thing that I kind of struggled with a fair bit is a lot of these enemies, since they're heavily blurred out, they look a lot bigger than what they are. So what kind of screws with me a fair bit is even my character looks a lot bigger, looks like a giant kind of blur. So I never really know how close I need to be, you know? So it's like I'm fully aware that a lot of these segments, you know, a lot of these areas give me like ample room to move in, but it's kind of hard because what'll happen is I'll have ample room, but it'll look small since everything else is blurred and looks big. So you kind of go and, you know, you struggle with it a fair bit, but I wanted to keep pushing through it. I think because, you know, a lot of people, they commonly say, oh hey, you know, you're blind, your days of gaming are over, and I wanted to show people that you can still do it with enough persistence. You know, that was like the whole idea behind this particular line of videos, and I'm not sure how long it's going to be yet, but you know, that was literally the whole idea, was persistence, patience, and time. You know, and I want to show people that you can overcome it if you're willing to put the time and effort into it. So for this boss fight, I struggled with it pretty hard because there's such a large amount of color that I have a hard time kind of keeping up with it. So we've got like a brown and green background, and then like a green and red boss, and it's, if it wasn't for the red, I don't think I'd be able to track him well. And then the other issue with the cannonballs, when they have spikes, I can't really tell that they have spikes, they just look big and blurred. So what winds up happening is, since I was playing these without any sort of audio, when the spikes retract, I wouldn't be able to hear it, and then I wouldn't really be able to see it that much. So it was kind of interesting because I'd be like, okay, is this cannonball ready? You know, like, is it something that I can pick up and throw? You know, is it something I'm going to struggle with a fair bit? So it was a lot of trial and error, and I feel that this fight's a lot of dumb luck as well. Like, I seriously felt that the only reason I beat it was because I had a lot of dumb luck on my side. So I actually like this boss to a certain lesser extent. I kind of feel like it overstays its welcome. You know, like this is pretty much the start of the DK habit of having bosses that kind of just drag on and on and on and on and on. And I mean, it's cool that they offer like DK barrels in between phases and stuff in case like you take some damage, but at the same time it just feels really, really tedious. I kind of prefer the boss stylings of Donkey Kong Country 1 where, you know, they were short and sweet. You know, they weren't too long, they weren't too short, they were just like the right amount of length. Even K. Rool at the end of DKC doesn't really feel too long or too short. You know, he feels like he has just the right amount of time. But with this one, it's like, okay, well, you know, we want you to do this and this and this and this and this, which, you know, I get that, but at the same time, it just doesn't really, to me at least, it doesn't really feel super amazing. You know, I wasn't really like a super huge collective fan of it or anything, and it gave me like a lot of food for thought because they just, they want you to be in it to win it for like the long term with this fight, and it feels kind of exhaustive after a while. So, but this is pretty much where the commentary is going to come to an end. There is 22 minutes left in this video, and I don't really have anything else to say on it. So, this is pretty much where the commentary is going to be cut. We have more commentary videos coming that I'm going to be working on over the course of the week, and they will be released over the next couple of months because I have a lot of them in the works. So for those that stopped by and watched this video and stuff, I greatly appreciate it. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you have an awesome evening. Till next time.